in my personal opinion, this is a very special episode. We'll talk about the Andalusian history, the history of the Andalus. It's one of the period of time that we don't learn a lot about in school, and even you won't find much people knowing about it. Why is that? Because it went extinct. Why this civilization was in the Iberian Peninsula, where it's right now is Spain and Portugal, right? So Muslims used to live there for a long period of time. Unfortunately, we don't learn about it. So I thought it was a good refresher for those who knew, and it's a good learning point for everyone who didn't know about it. Okay, so let's start. So our same objectives, we're learning about Andalus civilizations. We're trying to understand the challenges that took place during the Andalusian civilization, exploring their heritage, the art, literature, and architecture. We try to learn from our mistakes, and we need to be proud of our heritage and acknowledge the errors that took place in the past. Okay. For newcomers who just joined us, on the chat you'll find a WhatsApp group link. Feel free to join. It will be just easier to communicate on the WhatsApp group. Okay, let's go ahead and start. So, as we said, where is the Andalus? It's Spain, Portugal, it's southern France. Muslims stayed over there from 711 AD till 1492 AD. So that's almost 800 years. So when we think about 800 years, that's a very, very long period of time. So if you think about today, back to where Saladin was there, Salahuddin was there, that's almost 800 years. So that's a very long period of time. So it's just a shame that we don't learn about this period of great history. So we talked about the Umayyads back in the days. They conquered North Africa, right? Musa ibn Nusayr controlled the whole North Africa, and they started thinking about crossing over to the Iberian Peninsula. So Musa ibn Nusayr, one of his generals was Tariq ibn Ziyad, so he will take the lead. At this period of time, it was not only the Arabs. Islam started spreading across other nations, across the Berbers of the Amazighs. Amazighs are the occupants, those who are living in Libya, Tunisia, Algeria, and Morocco, so the North African coast. Tariq ibn Ziyad was one of them. So Tariq ibn Ziyad was a Muslim. So why did they think even of crossing to Europe, to the Iberian Peninsula? So this might be some complicated, but we're not going to details. Back before them, before the Muslims were over there was the Visigoth. If you read into history, they call them the Gothic tribes. They used to live over there in Hispania or Spain back in the days. These are Germanic tribes that lived in the area, and they took down the Roman Empire. So we all learn in school about the Roman Empire and how glorious it was, and it was. But actually it was taken down by the Germanic tribes, which are the Visigoths. So they took Rome, Italy, and then went west to Spain, which is or the Iberian Peninsula. So what happened is that one of the kings illegally took over the throne, and once this happened, there was a big period of instability that took place. What happened is that the Visigoth had some cities on the North African coast. One of the cities called Ceuta or Septa. In Arabic it's called Septa. So the governor was not in good relationship with the king, so he reached out to the Arabs and the Muslims and to the general Tariq ibn Ziyad to help him depose the bad king. So they went back, took permission from the caliph, permission granted, and they started crossing over. So that's how it started. So it's a civil war, not civil war, but a period of unrest for the Visigoth kingdom back then. So and then Tariq ibn Ziyad thinks, okay, I don't know anything about this place. So he sends an expedition force, a small number of troops that crosses over the sea to figure out what's on the other side. So it's always wise for us to learn, just don't be impulsive in our decisions. You want to take it slow. You want to learn about your enemy, or you learn about, whatever kind of mission you're getting yourself into. You need to explore it and plan accordingly. When he created his army, he was thinking about Muslim brotherhood. There is no difference between Arab and Amazigh. We're all Muslims, we're all equal. And that's what he did with his troops. When the picture that you see up there, this is the mountain, Jabal Tariq, that's how we call it, or Gibraltar. This is a whole government. It's over there right now. It's a country of its own, following the UK anyway. And this is the country of Gibraltar's currency. You can see in the picture, they actually put Tariq ibn Ziyad photo under currency. So there will be lots of Spanish names. When I'm preparing, there are lots of Arabic names, so I'm actually doing the translation. But European resources, when I look up for names, the names are in Spanish. So bear with me. You'll find some Arabic names. It might be difficult, but Spanish names might be even more difficult. So you don't have to memorize any. You just need to learn about that. So Tariq ibn Ziyad crosses over to Spain, and the very first encounter with the great Visigoth army, and it was a big battle that ends up with Muslims' victory. And once this happened, there was a lot of instability. That was the only army with big number of troops that was ready to fight the Muslims when they crossed over. So the doors were wide open for them. So the Muslims who crossed over actually went all the way to the north. to the east. This is Spain. This is France up there. So actually, they made it all the way to the Pyrenees mountain. They went all the way to the north, except there was a very tiny spot that was left, which is Leon, Kingdom of Leon. This will be a big mistake that happened, that it was left unfought. And the reason they didn't go up north, because the Caliph ordered them to stop. The Caliph in Damascus, the Umayyad Caliph, asked them to stop the expansion. There was a period of transition between one Caliph to another. So he put all military campaigns on hold till they figure out how things will go. So Wadi Lekka and the Battle of Guadalete, this is the first battle that Tariq ibn Ziyad and his troops fought the Visigoths. So now, when you think about Andalus, most people describe it as the paradise on earth. Think of it like that. At the moment, it's just a part of the province of the Caliphate. The capital will be Cordoba. Once things stabilized, the governor of Andalus, Abdurrahman al-Ghafiqi, that's his name, actually kept going with the expansion, hoping to cross the Pyrenees into France. And he did, but actually he kept expanding until he was stopped by the French king, Charles Martel. This is actually a picture from European resources as well. So Charles Martel stopped the Muslim expansion that started in Spain and the Iberian Peninsula and South France, and they stopped them at the Battle of Poitiers, or the Battle of Tours. So Poitiers is a city which is 200 miles south of Paris. So just imagine that the Muslim army was actually literally in France and was only 200 miles from Paris. That's even closer to, the distance between here and Dallas is way, way more than that, right? So they went all the way into France, not only the southern part, but all the way up to the city of Poitiers. This is where they stopped by Charles Martel, the French king. And in the meantime, what has been happening back home in the Middle East, in the Umayyad Caliphate, the Battle of Zab. Remember, we talked Battle of Zab, where the Umayyads and the Abbasids were fighting each other, and it ended up by the defeat of the Umayyads, right? When the Abbasids came, the Umayyads were taken custody, they were killed. Long story short, no one was in power left, except one person who actually escaped, was Abdurrahman al-Dakhil, Abdurrahman I. So Abdurrahman I, he's the only one who was able to escape. Just in brief, what happened, they were trying to capture him and his brother. They were caught trying to cross the river. They were about to drown in the river. They asked him to come back and will not do anything. You will be spared. Your life will be spared. His brother goes back. Abdurrahman says, okay, don't go back. Don't trust them. The brother goes back, and actually they kill the brother. So Abdurrahman Dakhil actually escapes. So al-Dakhil means, from the Arabic word dakhala, means enter. So because he enters Andalus alone, and actually he will be creating a great empire over there. So another name for Abdurrahman al-Dakhil, or actually a nickname, is Eagle of Quraysh, Saqr Quraysh. So when he entered over there, so this guy was a descendant of the caliphs. He was the grandson of Hisham ibn Abdul Malik, one of the Umayyad Caliphate. So he goes into Andalus. So right now there is no caliph and there's no Umayyad dynasty anymore, right? They're gone. Abbasids are still taking over. So in Andalus, this period of confusion, people was fighting, didn't know what's going on. What's our next step? Didn't know. So he entered the Andalus in a period of confusion, and he started creating alliance with the Arab tribes and the Mawali and the Berbers over there. Remember, the Mawalis, who are the Muslims, new Muslims who turn becoming Muslims, but they're not Arabs, right? And actually, after the alliance works for him, he declares himself the first Umayyad Caliph in the Andalus. So what do we learn from that? So this is just my personal perspective on it. It doesn't matter if you are on your own. If you work really hard and believe in yourself, great things will come to you at the end. So this is something we need to learn from Abdurrahman al-Dakhil. Just one man who escaped death, who was about to drown in the river, established a great empire, in Europe. So Al-Abbasids back then, Abu Ja'far al-Mansur, he was the Abbasid caliph. He tried multiple times to conquer the Iberian Peninsula or the Andalus, but he was not able to. And he said, praise be to God who has put the sea between me and this devil. He was so smart, he was so brave, was so cunning that Abbasids were not able to conquer him. Charlemagne was the French king at that time. He tried to conquer the Andalus as well, but he was not able to. Just asking the young ones who were with us before, Charlemagne, we talked about him in the past, right? He had good relationship with one of the rulers that we mentioned. Does anyone know who that person was? Who actually in the picture? This is Charlemagne, the French king. Who was that person? Who was friend with Charlemagne? He sent him a gift, the water clock. Does anyone know which Abbasid caliph are we talking about in this picture? Who was a friend of Charlemagne? It's okay. You can say, oh, give it a shot. Abbasid caliph who sent him the water clock as a gift. Anyone else can jump in if you guys know. It was Harun al-Rashid, if you guys remember. Okay, Harun al-Rashid was in good terms with Charlemagne. Anyway, so we're talking about Eagle of Quraysh. So Abbasids tried to conquer him. They were not able to. Charlemagne, the king of France, tried. They were not able to. And the Vikings, they even come into the picture there. So what do the Vikings have to do with the Muslims? I've never known that the Muslims and Vikings actually had encounters. Actually, they did. There were trades between them. Vikings lived in the Scandinavian part of the world. This is Finland, Sweden, Norway. They were very strong, brave warriors, and they tried multiple times to attack the western coast of Spain. And every time, Muslims kicked them out. They're not able to. So it was a period of wars. They had wars with the Muslims and the Vikings, and for periods of peace, they were having trade going on between them both. So we're still talking about the expansion under the Umayyad Caliphate, under Abdurrahman al-Dakhil and his descendants. So actually, they went all the way. So we see Spain, we see the south part of France. Actually, they go all the way to the Alps Mountains. So the Alps Mountain is right there. So they actually control the French Alps. If you divide them into like country, right? So the French part, the Alps that's present in France, part of the Swiss Alps, and actually part of the Italian Alps as well. It's a small part of Switzerland, small part of Italy, but they control the French Alps as well. So this is the maximum expansion that we see during the Muslim reign in Andalus. So this is the golden age. This is a great, great age for Muslims. Back in the days, remember, Andalus was part of Europe, right? So we actually, or the Muslims, that contribute to the civilization. And you'll see after a few slides how they contributed to the Renaissance. We'll talk about that, which is how the Europe changed from being medieval or dark ages to modernization. So you'll see, when we talk about Golden Age of Andalus, we see the Mosque of Cordoba. A very famous picture. Right now, it's a mosque cathedral, they call it, Mosque Cathedral of Cordoba. It was an age of prosperity. You start seeing scientists, musicians, scholars fleeing Baghdad. After Harun al-Rashid has died, if you guys remember when he talked about the Abbasids, his two sons started fighting together. So there was a civil war going on, Al-Amin wal-Ma'mun, right? So at this period of time, all the scientists, or not all the scientists, but some scientists, some scholars, some musicians leave Baghdad and look for somewhere prosperous to stay in, and actually end up in Cordoba and Andalus. The Arab agricultural revolution, so basically they were so advanced in engineering and coming up with like digging canals and irrigation, be able to irrigate areas of lands that was not properly irrigated before. And if you go to Spain right now, we still see some of the water canals that they built around as well. They were able to beat Constantinople. Constantinople is the capital of the Roman Empire or Byzantine Empire, right? The Eastern Roman Empire is called the Byzantine Empire. Constantinople is considered to be one of the biggest European cities ever built. So actually, Cordoba was able to beat Constantinople in the number of people living in. It became a hub for scientists and all kinds of scholars from Europe, not only from the Muslim world, but actually from the non-Muslim world as well. So it became leading European city. So we talked about Muslims and non-Muslims studied at Andalusian universities. In the Umayyad Caliphate, at that period of time, they actually constructed a school of translation in Toledo. So Michael Scott actually took the work of Averroes and Avicenna to Italy. Michael Scott is actually a priest and actually a scholar, an Italian one, who actually went to study in Andalus, and he took the scholarly work that scholars in Andalus have been working on and actually took it to Europe. And actually some may say that Averroes and Avicenna scholarly activity, the books they wrote, the papers they wrote, were actually one of the reasons Europe moved over to modernization, the Renaissance. Again, what is Renaissance? Just for people who just joined us lately. So it's the period in European history marking the transition from Middle Ages, or what we call the Dark Ages, to modernity. And that was we're talking about the 15th and 16th centuries. So now we're talking about great period of time where Muslims were there. Right? Talking about Abdurrahman al-Dakhil and his descendants, they were able to establish a great empire. But things always change, right? So now we're at a period of time that there was a caliph. He had only a child, a young child. This caliph died and his heir was this child. So now we have a caliph child on the throne. And what happens when you have a weak ruler on the throne? It becomes a puppet ruler, right? So the viziers or the advisors start taking advantage of him. They're starting fighting together to figure out who can control him the most until this guy, Al-Mansur ibn Abi Amir al-Hajib. Hajib means wazir. So Hajib al-Mansur ibn Abi Amir, and this is his monument or statue for him, still present over there in Spain. He created a state within the state. He became so powerful that he controls everything. Even the caliph had no power on the throne. And that continued, and Al-Hajib's son, and for his grandson. What happened that the greed became so obvious in his descendants and Hajib's grandson that he actually asked the caliph to make him the heir to the throne so he can become the caliph after him. So the princes, Umayyad's princes, go mad. They started fighting together. Caliphate is gone. So now we move over to a period of time. We don't have one united empire anymore, but instead we start dividing. So how did the division start? So each ruler or governor of city, okay, now I'm creating my kingdom of own. So now we live in Friendswood. So I declare myself the governor of Friendswood, so on and so forth. So this is actually what happened. So each governor of the city declared his city to be a kingdom of their own. So we started dividing it into like 24 different kingdoms. After civil wars between them, ended up between the 7 ta'ifas or muluk al-tawa'if, okay? So 7 different kingdoms. So it's a period where everybody was thinking about their personal ambition. They didn't care about the Muslims. They didn't care about the empire. They didn't care about the great history that the people before them created. No, everybody was thinking about themselves. It was a period of greed. Everybody wanted to expand his kingdom on the expense of his neighboring kingdoms. It was area of treason. We'll give examples shortly. They didn't care about science anymore. There was like the scholars started fleeing from Andalus right now. Religion was just pushed to the side. So there is a story here that I'm going to share with you. We used to hear this as kids. There was a lion who was actually trying to attack 3 bulls, right? But they were all of them together. He couldn't kill any of them. He couldn't eat any of them. So he goes over to the black and the red bull and he tells them, the white one doesn't look like you guys anyway. If you get rid of him, you'll be able to have more grass for you to eat. And they agree. So the lion actually eats the white bull. And then he goes over to the red bull. Both your color and I are actually similar to each other. Let's get rid of the dark bull. Now, the black bull, now you have more area to eat from, more grass for you to eat. And actually the red bull agrees and he eats the black bull. Then shortly after, he turns onto the red bull. And actually, he goes over to eat him because he's the only one. He cannot fight him anymore. And the Red Bulls say, I was eaten the day when the White Bull was eaten. So just remember that as long as we're united, we stand up together. We're separated, we fall. This is actually exactly what happened in Spain. And actually, is what's happening in our world right now. And actually, you can take this on personal level. As long as we're all together, all in one opinion, we're supporting each other. If we start dividing, we're starting fighting, we fall. So we'll talk shortly about Al-Mu'tamid ibn Abbad. Al-Mu'tamid ibn Abbad is one of the rulers, one of the Muluk al-Tawa'if, or one of the Ta'ifa's kings. And he was all busy, he's staying away from his kingdom affairs. He was just busy with his wife, who loved her crazy loving her. And he was known for lavish spending. So he takes the money of his kingdom and spending on his own family and his wife. And his family was so pampered that you can imagine anything that was there in Andalus and was put to their service. Like they have pearls, they have jewels, they have gold, they have everything. And one day, his wife was looking out of the window and she starts looking and she sees the maids actually playing in the mud. And she says, I want to be able to do that. Because he loved her like crazy, he's not paying attention to his kingdom. He orders his soldiers to get the best of perfumes from Andalus and from Europe and from North Africa. And he spills it all over on a big
pile of mud
for his wife to play with it. And then what happens after? I mean, this story, I think it's relevant to the adults here. When his wife disagrees with him in the future, in which what happened, they had disagreement, both of them. And she told him, I never had a good day with you. And he says, even the day of mud. So it's just an example how this guy was staying away from his kingdom and was just busy with life and the worldly life and his wife and, money, not paying attention to the division that the empire has been suffering from and actually was going to happen for him in the future. So Mu'tamid ibn Abbad is one of examples of the treason. So let's say an example why. So this is the area who was ruling, and this is the area where another king of Ta'ifa's king was ruling. So actually, he reaches out to the king of Alfonso VI, king of Castile, and he asks him to help him invade the Toledo kingdom. What happened? So actually, he betrayed his Muslim, brothers, and he conspires with the king of Castile. Right. What happens after is actually Alfonso VI conquers Toledo and actually takes it for himself. Now the old capital, which is the old Visigoth Empire, falls and under the Christian kingdoms, or actually goes to the Christian kingdoms again. The publican scholars go crazy. What are we going to do? The old capital fell. This is one of the biggest kingdoms they had, right? So they started thinking, we need to reach out to real Muslim people, real brave men who we can rely on. These kings are not doing any good, right? They reach out to al-Murabitin. In English, is the Muravids. So what does the word Murabit or Murabitin means? Means these are the soldiers who are actually staying at the borders between the Muslim countries, or actually the Muslim empires and the Christian empires back in the days, and actually protecting the whole Muslim kingdoms from the danger coming from the other Christian kingdoms. So this the word Murabitin means. Murabitin is actually an empire that started in Morocco and started expanding north, and you can see it here in Marrakesh, up north and all the way down to West Africa. Yusuf ibn Tashfin is one of the rulers we'll talk about shortly. So anyway, this public and the scholars reach out to Murabitin, reach out to the king of Murabitin, Yusuf ibn Tashfin, come help us. The king of Castile is trying to take over the kingdoms. Islam is going away from Anadalus. So Yusuf ibn Tashfin actually, because he was a wise king, he was a brave king as well, so he discussed it with his advisors. What are we going to do? Can we actually help them? And actually they make that decision. Let's go ahead, cross the sea, let's go to Andalus and save our brothers there. And actually that's what they've done. And they meet the king, Castilian king, in a great battle named Battle of Zallaqa. And as I told you earlier, the name will be in Spanish from European resources, also Battle of Sagrajas. So Battle of Zallaqa is one of the greatest victories in Muslims' history. The victory was celebrated all over Andalus. And actually, Yusuf ibn Tashfin had full control over Andalus now. So he can take it all to him, right? Add it to his kingdom. But actually what happened is that he starts, okay, I didn't come over for that. I'm just here to support my brothers. And he did. So actually he take his big army and go back to North Africa, cross the sea, back again to his home. What happens is that Ta'ifa's kings start fighting amongst each other again. Not only that, so some of them, including Mu'tamid al-Abbad, makes an alliance with the Castilian king to be able to fight his brothers, Muslim brothers. So what happens after? The scholars reach again to Muslim Yusuf ibn Tashfin, come help us, but this time, come and stay. Let's get rid of all the puppet kings who are in power. So now Andalus is not an empire anymore of its own. It's actually part of the Muravids empire. It's a Muravids province anymore. And Yusuf ibn Tashfin controls it all. The Muravids stay in power for a period of time. Shortly after, we have a new empire takes over, Al-Murabitin Empire. Instead of the Murabitin Empire, we have Al-Muwahhidin, or Mohads. That's how the English name for them. In this period of transition, the Muravids were in Andalus are gone. So Muslim kings in there start rebelling against the Muravids empire, and the Christian kingdoms takes advantage of that and start advancing south on the Muslim. So the Muwahhidin or Mohads actually mobilizing their troops over to Andalus and meet the Castilian kings again. One of the other great Muslim battles in history is called Battle of Al-Arak or Al-Arakos. So that's both the Arabic name and Spanish name. So Al-Arak is one of the great battles that Muslims won, the battle against the Christian kingdoms. But this time it's Al-Muwahhidin. Okay? So what do Christian kingdoms do? So actually they seek help. So they reach out to the Pope of Rome, which is the highest religious authority. And actually the Pope of Rome calls for crusade. Crusade basically reaching out to other kings and princes of Europe, ask them, okay, come help your Christian brothers. We have this group of people who are trying to fight, come help us against them. And actually this time, the Muslims lose. Battle of Al-Uqab, Los Navas de Tolosa. Just don't worry about the names right now. We're not going to ask you about that. But what you need to know about is this time, because there was a division within the Muwahhidin back then, the Muslims have lost this war, Battle of Al-Uqab. So now the Muwahhidins or the Mohads were the last strong Muslim hold in Andalus. Now that they lost, now they're kicked out. Muluk al-Tawa'if kingdoms or Taifas come back again to the picture, come back to power. This is a picture of the very famous picture of King of Ferdinand and Isabel. They took the lead to the Reconquista. So what is the Reconquista? It's military campaigns. This is the Spanish name, I know. It's military campaigns that Christian kingdoms in Andalus, or actually in Iberian Peninsula, were waged against the Muslim kingdoms to take them over from the Muslims, so they can be added to the Christian king. So that's the Reconquista, okay? Who were the pick? We said Ferdinand of Aragon and Isabel of Castile. So those were two different kingdoms, by the way. So Ferdinand ruled a kingdom, a Christian kingdom. Isabella was the queen of a different of Castile. Those are different Christian kingdom. Both of them get married. They combined together kingdoms. This is how Spain was born. It became one kingdom. So now your enemies actually came together as one big that you need to fight. They were able to control the whole of Iberian Peninsula except Granada. Of course, every time they conquer a smaller kingdom, Muslim kingdom, the Muslims over there flee and move over to Granada. So Granada became the refuge for Muslims in Andalus. So Granada Emirate was established by Muhammad ibn al-Ahmar. Al-Ahmar in Arabic means red. It was a small place compared to the whole Andalus, right? It's just that small strip over there. But actually, in that strip, there was fight going on for power. So the uncle and nephew were actually fighting to rule. Abu Abdul or Abu Abdullah, Abu Abdullah in Arabic, Muhammad or Muhammad the 12th, depending on where you read from, was in power. I mean, this will be the last ruler. We'll talk about him in a second. He actually was fighting his uncle for power. What happened is that Castilians took over his lands, his uncle's land, like almost half of the Granada Empire, of the Granada Emirate. Sorry. And he actually celebrated that. He celebrated the loss, his uncle's loss to his enemies, not thinking that he's next. Remember the lion and bull story? This is actually what's going to happen, right? So he was very weak, very hesitant, a shameful person to take power in the Muslim history. So Abu Abdul is in power right now. Now they move over to him. They ask him to surrender. And now what does he want to do? Am I going to give up? This is the last Muslim stand or foothold in Europe or not? So while he was discussing it with his advisors, everybody said, we cannot fight them. Let's surrender. Let's give it away. We have one positive figure showing up, Musa ibn Abi Ghassan, who's one of the generals. He said, I'm not going to die. I'm not going to surrender, give up is the Muslim country we've been living in forever, and actually goes out fight. He goes in with only a few soldiers, and actually he was martyred. So we'll start thinking, so we'll talk about 1492 now. So at that period of time, there were other great empires showing up. We'll talk about the Ottomans, Mamluks. So where was everyone? The Ottomans were busy fighting in Cyprus. We'll talk about Ottomans, inshallah, in the last lecture. Mamluks of Egypt were fighting for the throne amongst each other. The Marinids, which is the new power rising in Morocco, actually tried to help, but they were defeated. They were not able to do anything. So the Grenadians or the Muslims over there were left for their fate on their own. So I'll just take longer to explain the end scene because it's very dramatic, in my opinion. It's a very, very dramatic scene in Muslim history. So you start seeing the Spanish troop walking into Granada, which was a Muslim emirate. The king and queen actually goes on their knees, thanking God for letting them conquer Granada. By the way, this is a story which was never proven. We hear about it all the time. It was never proven, but it just shows you the devotion or actually the dedication that the queen had to take over Granada. She vowed not to shower until she takes over. She controls Granada. There was a siege on Granada for almost 8 months, and it is said that the queen didn't even shower even once until they were able to conquer Granada and Abu Abdul surrendered. And then we start seeing Abu Abdul giving away the city, the keys to the city and the keys to the Alhambra, which is the royal palace, his royal palace in Granada. I think this is an example for humiliation, what happens when we start facing the consequences of our divisions. Right? So Abu Abdul became the last Muslim rulers in Iberia after 800 years of Muslim presence in Andalus, 800 wonderful, glorious years of Muslim presence in Andalus. So he goes, we'll still talk about the last end scene, right? He goes to the top of the mountain and cries, and his mom is standing next to him. And she says, you have the right to weep like women, as you are not able to defend the kingdom as real men do. Until now, if you go to Spain, there is a spot that's called the Moor's Last Sigh, which is Moor is like a name that they gave to the Muslims, like that. So called Puerto del Suspiro. Actually, some tourists go there, still visit that location where Abu Abdul was actually crying for losing Granada. So just real quickly, we'll just look at the Granada Treaty. What did Abu Abdul try to do before he leaves? He was trying to, he asked for safety of Muslims and their belongings, freedom to practice religion. He actually requested that the Pope of Rome provide guarantees that this treaty is going to be respected after he leaves. Shortly after, Abu Abdul was seen begging in the streets of Morocco. So just imagine, subhanAllah, he was a great king. Well, not a great king, but he was a king for one of the great places, and he was actually seen begging in the streets of Morocco. We're not stopping here. There will not be any questions, but maybe for the older kids, there was something called Inquisition trials. So this is actually what happens to the Muslims shortly after. There was forced conversion. People were forced to convert from being Muslims to Christianity. Muslims had to hide their identity. You're not allowed to pray or fast anymore. You have to drink wine. You have to eat pork. Some people were tortured for becoming Muslims or actually staying Muslims. All Arabic books were forbidden. You were thrown in the fire. It is maybe 150 years later, all Muslims were expelled from Spain. For the adults, you can actually read the testimonies of Napoleon's soldiers who actually went into Spain another 100 years later about the tortures and the horrors that the Muslims faced. But anyway, so that was the story of the Muslims and Andalus. Let's look at the heritage real quick. Let's see something positive there. So we hear a lot of Averroes or Ibn Rushd, Ibn Tufayl. So these stars were named actually by Muslim astronomers. And actually, when I looked this up, I found there were more than 160 stars named by Muslims, astronomers that actually still in use till now. So a star named Altair, Deneb, which means tail. Altair means the flyer. Betelgeuse, which is Beit al-Jawza, which is the Gemini, the horoscope. So When I looked up on Google, I found a big list of stars named in Arabic. Actually, these are just with the A. So just keep going, and you see from A to Z. I found hundreds of names, and until now, see more than 165 stars named in Arabic. So it's Ibn Rushd and Ibn Tufayl. In medicine, Al-Zahrawi, one of the most famous Andalusian physicians that ever existed, a great physician in the entire history of the Western Islam. And he came up with this book, The Arrangement of Medical Knowledge, for one who's not able to compile a book for himself. You don't have to know the name, of course, but he actually invented the surgical instruments or the scalpels that's used for surgery, right? Actually, it's still in use, by the way. So it's Al-Zahrawi. In medicine, we still talk about Ibn Nafis. So this is the guy who actually discovered the blood circulation. But actually, for the doctors in here, it's the pulmonary circulation. But actually, he's the one who found out about the blood circulation. And this is actually a picture from his book. Ibn al-Baytar, he came up with books about a book about medications. He actually had listed their medical use for over 1,400 plants. Just imagine that. And that's what we're talking about. We're talking about the period between 700 AD and 1400. They were pretty advanced in their age. They have great thinkers. We talked about Ibn Khaldun shortly. He's a great historian. He's a sociologist. And he's the one who came up with the life cycle of nations, and that hard times create great men will create prosperous times. But when you have prosperous times, you make weak men, and weak men will create hard times for the people. Or the architecture, Rahman III, so he's one of the grandchildren of Abdurrahman al-Dakhil. He constructed the city of Zahra. Of course, it's ruined right now, but we still have some walls to see. Rahman II built a city of Madrid. City of Madrid actually is of relevance to all of us, because when you look it up, the city of Madrid it's Madrid right now. So Rahman II actually built a palace, like a summer palace for him to hunt and so on and so forth, in some small place that he can enjoy. And he called it Madrid. Madrid actually evolved into being Madrid, which is the capital of Spain right now. So just remember, Madrid was actually built by Rahman II, which is the grandson of Alhambra. Alhambra is one of the most beautiful pieces of architecture you can see worldwide. It was built by Muhammad ibn al-Ahmar. It was his palace. It was his fortress. You can see how beautiful it is. This is at nighttime. This is a fountain surrounded by lions. Here you can see wala ghalib illallah. There's no victorious or no conqueror except Allah. It was so beautiful that when Ferdinand and Isabella actually took over Granada, they took it to it became the royal court. It's still, of course, present right now. Al-Hamra is an Arabic name, and it means the red one. So in case anybody was asking why is it old, because everything looks red in there. We'll still talk about architecture. We have this great, it's called the Giralda or Giralda of Seville. It was built by Muwahhidin or Mohads. It was actually a minaret. It's currently the bell tower of Seville Cathedral. Moving over to philosophy, Averroes, he established a school of philosophy that influenced Europe's secular thought. Europe's secular thought back in the days, the Catholic Church controlled Europe completely. It was forbidden to think outside or stand again or actually have a different opinion than what the church is saying. So actually his thoughts starting helping people to actually think out of the box, think against the church, not against them in a religious way, but actually we'll talk about scientific ways. So this is the sort of separation between church and religion, church and science. Ibn Firnas, I mean, most of the adults will know Abbas Ibn Firnas. So he actually investigated the mechanics of light. So what he did, that he got actually frames of wood and he glued them with feathers. And he started investigating the mechanics of light. He tried to fly. Unfortunately, it was not successful because it was very, very early on, but he's the one who started investigating the mechanics of light. And he actually gave the idea, or actually investigated the concept before, I'm sorry, I forgot the name now, but actually, what's the name right now? Just a second. Oh, Leonardo da Vinci. I'm sorry. So Leonardo da Vinci, when you look at his paintings and discoveries and inventions, you'll see lots of inventions related to flight. He actually investigated that like almost 600 years before Leonardo da Vinci. Others, scientists, Al-Zarqali, Maslam al-Majriti, we know now the Majriti was from Madrid, right? So the mathematicians, the astronomers, flourished in Cordoba. Abu Ubaida al-Balansi from Valencia. So for those of you who like soccer, you can relate. He's from the city of Valencia. He's the one who actually came up with the Earth actually is sphere. It's not as flat as we thought in the past. So we had great scientists. Music, we know that musicians have actually left Baghdad, right? Because of the civil war that happened with his children. So Ziryab is one of the musicians who actually moved over there. And we started seeing, or actually listening to Andalusian Muwashshahat. It's actually basically what it means, poetry is being played with music. Okay, so let's move over to the significant figures, and this will be the last thing we'll talk about today. Yusuf ibn Tashfin, a great leader who actually was ruling Al-Murabitin or Murabids Empire. So he was born in Morocco's desert. He was just a general in his cousin's kingdom. His cousin named Abu Bakr Umar al-Lamtuni. This was the king. So Abu Bakr Umar al-Lamtuni actually moved to the south because he wants to spread the word of Allah. He spread the Islam all the way to Muslim countries. So we'll talk about Cameroon, about Nigeria, Senegal, all these African countries. And Yusuf was his deputy in Morocco, in Marrakesh. What happens when Abu Bakr al-Lamtuni comes few years later, and he sees how wonderful job Yusuf ibn Tashfin has done, he actually decides, I'm going to leave the throne for Yusuf. He's doing a good job. Actually, I will go back to spread Islam in Africa. That's actually what happens. So now Yusuf becomes the ruler of the Murabids Empire. We went briefly through what happened between Alfonso when he wanted to conquer the other Ta'ifa's kingdom. There was Alfonso and Mu'tamid, they had messages going between them both. So Alfonso sends a message when he wants to conquer Al-Mu'tamid ibn Abbad's kingdom. He said, the flies around your cities have been irritating me. Send me a fan to help. So basically what he's trying to say is insulting him. I mean, as if he's his slave. He wants him to send him a fan because it's just irritating because of the flies that he will be struggling or actually suffering from when he was trying to conquer his city. So Al-Mu'tamid sends him back. By Allah, if you don't return, I will send you a fan of Murabids. So Mu'tamid al-Abid is actually threatening Alfonso, the king of Castile, that if he starts conquering his land, I will ask help from the Murabitin and Murabids to come, which actually happened. And we'll talk about the Battle of Zallaqa, one of the greatest battles in the history of Islam. When Musa ibn Shahim is in power right now, right? So we said that he came to Andalus, he left, and he came back again when the Ta'ifa started fighting together. He gave power twice. So first time when he decided, I didn't come here to conquer and just came to help my brother, and when he went back. And then the second time when he came back, he could have said, I'm a caliph myself, but he didn't. Actually, he said, no, the caliph is in the Abbasid Empire. The caliph is in Baghdad in Iraq. I swear my allegiance, plead my allegiance to the Abbasids. I'm just taking the name Prince of Muslims. I'm not the caliph. He had all the power. He could have been another caliph, but he said no. He wanted to preserve the unity of Muslims. He cared more about the union of the Ummah more than anything else. And he died in his palace in Marrakesh, Morocco. So that brings us to the end of our slide. I hope you guys learned something new today. And if you guys have any questions before we proceed to the Kahoot, please bring it up.